On this week's Back of the Grid, we're here to preview the Japanese Grand Prix, and we've already got a mid-season driver swap to talk about. Hello everyone, welcome to Back of the Grid. I'm Chris, joined as ever by Tom.
Hello.
Here for the Japanese Grand Prix, which I still haven't got used to it being this early in the season, actually.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it? Was it just last year? Was that the first time we did it this early? I can't remember.
It's only been 1, maybe 2 years tops it's
Yeah.
been early on, yeah.
I would just like to point out, calling this a mid-season driver change is very, very optimistic in terms of time frames, Chris.
I mean, it's not the beginning, it's not the end.
It's the beginning of the season still. We've done like 2 races. It's
But yeah, I mean, as suspected last week, feared last week, it has been confirmed now that Liam Lawson is being demoted to Racing Bulls to be replaced by Yuki Tsunoda at Red Bull. There's lots to talk about around this, so we'll try and stay vaguely structured with it. I guess to start with, just kind of, we should talk about Lawson and how we've got to this point. Obviously, he's only done 2 race weekends, both at tracks he's never raced on before, one of which was rain affected and had people falling off the road left, right and centre. The other one at a sprint weekend with next to no practice time. I mean, he was slow. There's no denying that. He was last, if not close to last, in all the qualifying sessions. He's got like a retirement and a 12th place to his name, I think. But 2 races in is extremely early to be making a choice like this.
Yeah, I think in the hindsight thing in this is the team probably realising that they should have made the decision that everybody else around Formula One had already made for them, which is Yuki gets the promotion to replace Perez and Lawson comes in to replace him at Racing Bulls.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it would have gone any better if Yuki had been in the car since day one. He might have had the same results as Lawson's had. Like, only time will tell for this weekend and beyond. But I think the fact that they were willing to make the change so early shows they feel they've made a mistake in the original choice. And
yeah,
I get the philosophy of the team stance, which is we really want to push to make sure we're in contention for the Constructors' title this season, and that's not going to get us there. But also, if that was the goal, they shouldn't have been bringing what is effectively a rookie. And I know obviously he did races last year, but by the standards of how we define rookies, he is a rookie this season. And if that's what they wanted to achieve, they should have been putting a more seasoned driver in the car, not a rookie. So anyone could have told you that a rookie's not going to get you to that point in the championship in a car that's notoriously sensitive and notoriously needs a very particular driving style to get the best out of it. Anyone could have told you that.
Yeah, I mean, Verstappen has said as much. The team have said as much. Like, it's a very difficult car to drive. It's also worth noting that he got probably less testing time than would have been ideal. Like, testing's short these days anyway. He had a lot of technical problems. Like, he's not had much time in that car at all. I think it's worth noting as well, like, again, like, there's no denying that his results have been poor. But I think the tightness of the field really exaggerates it. Like, I went back and looked at the Chinese Grand Prix as a comparison point. So Lawson was in qualifying 7/10 off Max. That equated to Max was 5th on the grid, Lawson was 20th. You look at Gasly, same track in 2019. He was 8.5 tenths, so even further behind. He was one position behind Max on the grid. Perez was 3 tenths behind in last year, one place behind on the grid. Obviously, Albon didn't race for Red Bull in China because of world events in 2020. But like take Bahrain, which is a sort of similar lap time. He was 7 tenths behind Max in qualifying, but he was one place behind him on the grid. So I think just how close the field is these days is making those few tenths look that much worse on a sort of grid position.
Just to play devil's advocate on that, those times that you're comparing, are they all Q1 times?
They are all the session that they did their best times in. So for most of the rest, it's Q3 times.
Okay, so it's every driver's best time, regardless of what session it was in, basically.
They're still within the same session. So all of the rest of them, their best times happen to be in Q3, obviously. For Lawson, he didn't get past Q1. I suppose the reverse side of that is if you look at the race results for all of those drivers finished no more than 2 or 3 places behind Verstappen. And obviously Lawson's race pace wasn't there to bring him that close. Yeah. But
I'd be interested to do that comparison you've done specifically against Q1, though, at some point. Because I'd be interested to know, just from a statistical point of view, I know that there's some similar gaps there, but we all know that the likes of Verstappen, Hamilton, Leclerc, Norris even, they've all got another 5 tenths in their back pocket usually between Q1 and Q3. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of an element of in Q1 they were more like 2 tenths away from Max, and then Max like basically unlocked full potential in Q3 and
if Lawson made to Q3 would that gap be a lot bigger? It's a fair point, and it could be the case.
So, but I mean, it's interesting all the same to see that exactly what you were saying before, where there's, I mean, you only have to look at the qualifying for those first couple of races. There's in Q1, pretty much the entire field is being covered by between 7 tenths to a second, which we used to get one. I know it's not been it's been a long time since this, but we used to get people on pole by nearly a second once upon a time. It's crazy to think that the whole field is in that gap now. I mean, it's closer in Formula 1 Q1. The session is closer than GP2 below it, or F2, sorry, below it, that is a spec series. For comparison. Yeah. And I know those are much junior drivers in comparison, but they are the drivers that are essentially due to be the next Formula 1 drivers, and they're not even that close to each other in equal machinery. So crazy.
Yeah. And I think what's really frustrating as well is, as I said, this has been 2 races at tracks he's never driven at. We're about to go to a track where he's driven at a lot in feeder series and in Super Formula. Like, to not even give him a 3rd race to try and figure something out, it's... You know, I mean, Red Bull have previous of chopping and changing drivers. But, like, when you look at, like, you think of Kvyat and Gasly and Albon being, like, ruthlessly cut. Kvyat had a full season and then he was dropped after 4 races, which was happening in 2016. Gasly had 12 races. Albon had the rest of Gasly's season and another full season after that. And they felt brutal at the time. Like, I remember Gasly being dropped and everyone was like, oh my God, I can't believe they're doing this so soon. He got, like, 6 times the number of races that Lawson got.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. And the team have basically, as you say, they sort of admitted they made a mistake promoting him, and they're talking about like a duty of care to like support him and like through this struggling time. And it's like you're demoting the guy. Like come off it. Like
the whole duty of care thing is just garbage to save face.
Yeah,
the duty of care would be to help him try and solve what was wrong in the car. But there's a lot of us that will sit here and happily say we don't think it was the right appointment to begin with, and this is a Nelson ha kind of moment at Red Bull's expense. Like, we told you so.
Yeah.
We told you this would happen.
Which I suppose leads on to the question, like, is Tsunoda going to prove to be the right choice? Is he going to fare any better? Or is it like a lot of people seem to think, that car is so specific in the window it needs to be driven in? There's basically only one person in the world that can drive it fast.
Well, the results between the two of them for the next few races is going to tell that tale, I think, isn't it? It's going to paint that picture.
Yeah.
It will tell us once and for all if this season's car is as bad as we suspect it is, and it's just Max getting a superhuman performance out of it, or if it was just not suited to Lawson. But I feel like Lawson and Tsunoda have a similar driving style to some extent. I feel like they're both quite aggressive. And if that is why Lawson has struggled with this, that he's too aggressive and the car is too sensitive to be able to be driven like that, I can't see, if that is the case, I can't see Tsunoda being any better.
Yeah, like I would absolutely love Tsunoda to finally get a shot in the Red Bull, which he's been after for years, and it go well for him, and you know, stick it on the podium in his debut at his home race. Like, that'd be incredible. But it just seems like the more likely outcome right now is that he's also gonna struggle in that car. Like,
I'm gonna sort of land somewhere in the middle on this, where I think that Yuki will probably do better than Lawson and justify changing the drivers, but I think he will probably end up somewhere similar to what Perez was a lot of last season, like in the bottom half of the points, while Max is pushing to try and get a podium position. That would be my guess based on what we've seen of Yuki in the past, providing that it's not this whole car is too sensitive situation. Which I just genuinely don't know what to expect at the minute. I from what we'd seen of Lawson last year, I was quite optimistic that he would be able to get something out of that car and do something with it. It's been the exact total opposite. I even said last week that I didn't expect Red Bull to be that knee-jerk about getting rid of him, but I also wouldn't be surprised if it happened. So that's kind of where I sit on that as well. So at the moment, it feels just like a complete unknown. I'm going into it, and I just have to not expect anything in particular, and just I think that's what we've all got to do. We can't go in expecting something in particular because it's just such an unknown. With it being so early in the season as well, like we've still not seen Tsunoda actually follow through a good result yet this year, which is wild because both of his drives have looked like they've had great potential, and then they've fallen away. Well, other than the sprint, I suppose the sprint's the exception. But like you said when we were discussing that in the review episode, it's almost like racing bulls can only do races without pit stops, as per Ferrari. So Ferrari and Racing Bull special race. But I think that the two actual full race distances that he's attempted have been in some way compromised. So we still don't actually know if Yuki could have seen those through. I mean, he probably would have, but we still don't know for sure.
No.
Which just makes it an even crazier unknown to be in.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, he's going to have a good strategy team behind him for the first time this year. And of course, the other question now is, what happens if Tsunoda does struggle as much as Lawson? Like, what do they do then? Like, you know, I think Helmut Marko has said, Tsunoda's in the car until the end of the season now. Do we believe that? Like, if he's performing the same way, then again, they've got no one else, have they? Short of, like, crawling back to Perez or Ricciardo, like, there's literally, they've run out of options.
Yeah, I think this just highlights the fact that he should have been in the car from day one, and I think they would have given him more time that they've not given Lawson, because there's an element of we've seen him prove his potential in the Racing Bull and get decent results in the Racing Bull previously. So I think there would have been a little more patience if it had been Yuki in the car since day one.
Yeah.
And this is a bit more... I think this is about the team saving face from being embarrassed around the fact that they made the wrong decision to begin with, basically. And they're feeling a bit egg on the face. He's not only not doing well, but ending up down the back of the field. And at least if they'd taken Yuki and Yuki was in this position after 2 races, there'd be an element of, well, we've seen his potential in the Racing Bull. We've seen his potential over the last 2 or 3 years building towards this. He just needs time to adjust. And then they would have given him more time. I think Lawson being in the position that he's in and being a relative rookie for the most part, it's egg on the face from everybody around the world who in unison said, why on earth have you put Lawson there? It should have been Yuki. And it's almost like they're reacting to that pressure than anything else. Than the actual performance. I mean, yes, the performance is a part of it, but I think a huge part of it is some sort of trying to save face over the wrong decision being made in the first place.
I do wonder as well if there is something in Verstappen's contract about the team finishing below a certain point in the Constructors' Championship unlocks a clause within his contract. That's been kind of pretty widely discussed. And, you know, they can see, looking at the results, they can see where they're likely to shake out come the end of the season. And it might be low enough that Verstappen can just be like, now I'm done. You know, we know how much Toto has been courting Max over the last several years. So I think there's probably an element of that going on as well. It's just Red Bull as a team and the driver management is just so interesting to me because in many respects it's over like a couple of decades now probably. It's been such an amazing talent finder and way of bringing people up through the ranks. Like you look at the list of F1 drivers over the last 5 years and the number of them that at one time or another were part of the Red Bull program is staggering. They've bought, so, I mean, even just on the grid this year, outside of the 2 Red Bull teams, I think it's Gasly, Sainz and Albon are all there because they came through the Red Bull program. But at the same time, there's 3 names that are doing very well right now that Red Bull just sort of dropped because they saw the next shiny thing. I mean, they even had the opportunity to sign up Carlos Sainz last year to be in their car this year, and they turned that down. And you kind of have to question what they're doing at a certain point because you can't just keep churning through drivers. And again, we've said it before, it feels like they're just churning through them, waiting for them to find the next Max Verstappen. And, you know, obviously the Lawson situation is slightly different because it's such a lower performance. They had stability with Perez for a number of years, but then they almost had the opposite problem then when they stuck with him when all logic was saying he's not performing. It's such a bizarre and fascinating way they manage drivers. And it makes me worry what it's going to mean for Tsunoda. Because they've already got Arvid Lindblad coming through, who Helmut Marko, you know, that seems to be his next favourite thing. So, I don't know, man. It's all very strange.
They got very lucky in getting Verstappen as soon as they did after Vettel. Having 2 drivers being able to come through as young as they both did and achieve what they did so quickly, other than when Hamilton did it. Like, I mean, think about it. That was the last one before those 2, realistically.
Yeah.
Was Hamilton. And even then, Hamilton was already into his 20s by the time he was getting his first season in 2007, I think. I mean, I could be wrong, but I want to say it was like 22 or something like that. 21, 22. So, yeah, like they've been extremely lucky to have two extremely great young talents at such a young age in Vettel, followed by Verstappen. And I think that, yeah, maybe there is an element of keep churning until we find the next one so that Verstappen can go do whatever it is he wants to do next, if that is move teams, blah, 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 and they can bring through the next one that they'll bed in over a few seasons of not being the fastest, and then hopefully try and win and go like a cycle, like what they did from Vettel to Verstappen.
Yeah, because I mean, if they're right now building a car that it seems like only one person can drive, and that one person leaves the team, then they're in real trouble.
Yeah,
like, I think.
Imagine Tsunoda struggles even just a little bit compared to Verstappen, even if it's in that ballpark somewhere down the bottom end of the points at best, right? And Verstappen does decide that he's going to go somewhere else, and because, like, other than Ferrari, who've just signed Lewis Hamilton, who else realistically on the grid is going to turn down the opportunity to sign that guy? No one.
No,
I think Ferrari are literally the only team that would turn down that opportunity, and that's just because they've made one of the killer signings of last season in getting Hamilton to come on board. So he's got options up and down that grid. I mean, I think even McLaren would think about a tough decision of trying to make that work. They'd have to, even though they've got them both in long-term contracts, I'll bet that they would at least be hard-pressed to think about it.
Yeah.
And I think if that Red Bull was left to be driven by the likes of Tsunoda, Lawson, and so on, they would either have to develop it back away from that super fast, super pointy, sensitive car that it is, and inherently lose performance anyway, or they'd have to keep going down that trajectory and they'll not get results because the drivers can't drive it on that much of a knife edge. I would say that we talked about this a little bit last week, but I would say there's only a handful of drivers in the world who can drive a car that's that on the edge of performance. And you only have to look back over the decades to see that there's not many in a lifetime that can drive a car that's that on the edge. Like,
absolutely,
the likes of your Sennas, your Laudas, your Schumachers, they were able to do it. And I think if you probably put the likes of Hamilton in that, he'd probably be able to get something out of it. You've seen him get results he's got no right doing in the same way Max does. I don't think there's many other currently, other than Hamilton, who could probably get anything near what Max does out of that car.
No, not
and
at
I
all.
think even if you went back historically, you would struggle to find other drivers who could. And some of them have sadly not been with us for a number of years in some regard, and definitely not been competitive in a number of years. So I can't think of anyone in the last, other than you probably have to go back as far as Schumacher, I think, to find
probably
the last driver who could seriously get the best out of a car that's that on the nose.
Maybe like prime Raikkonen.
Maybe.
Like when he, in his early McLaren years, when he was like at his absolute peak, maybe.
Yeah.
But...
And in his first Ferrari stint.
Yeah.
The first Ferrari stint. Maybe. But even Alonso is considered one of the best drivers on that grid. And I don't think he'd like that car.
Oh, like, no, his driving style's wildly different.
So off the opposite way. Like, he's very understeer, not oversteer. And there's like a bit of a complete difference there as to... So I don't think he'd ever be able to drive a car like that. And it probably would throw questions up of, is Alonso as good as what people
Alonso's
say?
washed. He's past it.
Yeah, but that's a whole other thing.
Yeah. I think when you kind of couple these driver problems, these car problems with the number of people Red Bull have lost over the last few years, like obviously you've got Adrian Newey, Jonathan Wheatley are like the headline ones, but there's been a number more.
Yeah.
It definitely feels to me like this is kind of the beginning of the end of this particular kind of Red Bull dominance era. I mean, obviously, results-wise, we're already seeing that, but I much like after the sort of Vettel years, there are a number of years after that when Red Bull were kind of a bit further back down the grid, and then they built the way back up. And I think we're about to see another dip for a few years for Red Bull, especially if whether that's caused by or is the cause of Verstappen leaving. I think that's a possibility, but yeah, interesting times.
Yeah, for sure.
Should we move on and talk about this upcoming weekend?
Yeah, I think that's enough about the driver change. It's been done to death.
Couple of special liveries this weekend. There's going to be a Red Bull one. We haven't seen it yet, other than a couple of like postage stamp sized leaked 480p photos. It looks like it's going to be a lot like the white Honda livery they ran last year. Which the obvious joke there is that they are disguising the Red Bull and RB as each other, so they can secretly put Verstappen in the RB because it's a better car. But there we go. Haas have got a special livery as well, which they've revealed photos of. That's kind of a sort of pink cherry blossom thing on it. From the side, it looks quite nice, but as soon as you see it front on with the red wings, it kind of all clashes a little bit for me.
Definitely side on, it looks pretty nice with the way that they've touched the logo up with the pink and got a gradient going on it and all that stuff. Like the Haas one does look nice. It's going to be funny, isn't it? Because we're going to go from having one and a bit white cars to having 3 white cars with pink bits on them. More or less.
And also 2 pink cars as well, technically.
Yeah. So
Crofty's going to have a nightmare this weekend.
It's going to be one of those weekends. I mean, this is just influencing my predictions decision for later on. Just putting that out there. Special liveries are a no-no.
No, that's never a good idea.
Poor Tsunoda, first drive, home race, special livery. That is a trifecta of bad things.
First
right
corner
there.
DNF.
That has got a not even making the grid full stop. That's got a I destroyed the car in FP3 and it wasn't even recoverable for qualifying kind of weekend written all over it.
If Tsunoda ends up being a random driver this weekend, all bets are off.
I mean, I'm worried now. You said that as to who it might end up being, because I'm just going first DNF for Tsunoda if that's what it is. I've got to.
Yeah. Speaking of Tsunoda, if we do a few little storylines for this weekend, he is obviously the big one. How is he going to handle not only the pressure of finally getting a Red Bull debut, but a home Grand Prix as well, where the expectations are already high for him. It's never going to have been higher now he's in a, in theory, front-running car.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Like I said at the top of the show when we were first talking about this, I really don't know what to expect. It's hard to answer. I do genuinely think that it will be somewhere in the middle. I don't think... Well, no. I'm hopeful that he's close enough to Max that he's comfortably in the top 10 and fighting for some decent positions and maybe even more. But I think the realistic... That's the heart side of me. And the heart side of me is like him pushing near the front end in his home race. What's his best ever finish? Is something like 4th? Did he get 4th one year in Brazil I feel like he's had somewhere like that?
Yeah.
I feel like he's had a decent result, and my heart says, oh, he'll just maximise it. He'll use that extra 10th that the crowd gives him, and he'll get one of those kind of results. But my head says he'll be somewhere between where Lawson was struggling and Max is managing the car at the moment, and it'll be like bottom end of the points is my relatively sensible guess. So enough to justify, for Red Bull to be able to justify this is why we've swapped them.
Yeah. But
not enough to be like, oh my God, they're going to be in with a chance of the Constructors' title.
Yes.
Because I don't think there's any way that car's winning a Constructors' title, despite what Red Bull tell us that they're planning on trying to do.
And then on the other side of the Red Bull family, how is Lawson going to handle the switch this weekend?
I think it could. This is another one that's difficult, and it could go one way or the other. I think it could be 0 to hero, and he scores points, and again, it's like a bit. It just proves that there's something going on with that Red Bull car that just makes it so difficult for the vast majority to drive, or it's going to absolutely tank him because of just a lack of confidence, and he's going to be at the. And the thing is, we know from what we've seen so far that the car does have some okay potential, and if Hajar's I know Hajar will have obviously been in it for a couple of races and has had more time with it, but if Hajar's like handily outperforming him in only his third race weekend, when Liam's got previous with the team, and so I think that's what leans me more into he'll get an okay result because he's going back to a team where he was fairly comfortable in previous seasons, and it's for all understanding it's a better car now than it was when he was there last year. So in theory, I'd expect him to be capable of pushing towards the points, depending on how things go ahead of them. Whether we will or not, that's another matter.
Yes. I was going to say I'm backing Lawson to score some points this weekend. Then I remembered what team he's driving for. Yeah. I'm backing Lawson to put himself in a position where points are possible, but I don't trust he's the team to strategically keep him in that position.
Yeah, it's basically like what Tsunoda's done up to now with that car.
Yeah, exactly. I think he just needs to get through Friday. I think if he can have a clean Friday, get some good running in, I think he'll be fine. The last thing he needs is a crash or beach in the gravel or something on Friday, because then his confidence is going to be just shot. But I think if he can make it through Friday, keep it clean, I think he'll be all right.
Yeah.
Also, Williams worth talking about. Can Albon overcome a 3 DNF streak in Japan, which I didn't realise he had? That's a pretty rough record he's got.
Yeah, the last 3 years, I don't think he's completed a race distance with the 3 years combined. If I remember right from the number of one.
Grim.
He's got a turn 1 incident, and he's got a lap 1 incident. I can't remember if it was turn 1 or not, but he's got a lap 1 incident and a lap like 15, 16 incident of some kind. And I can't remember when the most recent one was, but in short, he's barely stringed a race distance together in Japan over the last 3 years. So, yeah, I thought I'd throw this one into storylines because it's just an interesting one of, is this a bit of a bogey track for Alexander Albon, and is it a weekend where someone like Carlos Sainz maybe shines a little bit and gets his hand, his foot up above Albon for once?
Which Carlos needs, because like all through testing and even through qualifying in Australia, he was looking really good, and it just seems to have got away from it a little. And obviously, the Australia race was a disaster for him, but the whole China weekend, he never seemed to be able to get the pace out of that car. So he very much needs a result this weekend as well.
Yeah.
And then just to throw something else into the mix, it's potentially raining on Sunday, as the forecast currently looks, which could throw everything we've just said completely out the window, because Australia proved that a bit of rain can cause absolute chaos. So shall we attempt to make some predictions?
Yeah, let's go through this. So for those of you who are newer to the show, we run a predictions league essentially every race weekend throughout the course of the season, and Chris and I will momentarily go through and predict fastest driver in Q3, race winner, first DNF, number of finishes for the race, and then a random driver's finishing position. If you want to get involved, it is worth doing so, because there are prizes for people who get a perfect 5 out of 5 on a race weekend. If you want to find out more about this as we're talking about it, head to backofthegrid.com and you can register on there if you've never played before, or if you've played in previous years and maybe this is your first race back with us this season, anything like that. All the accounts will still work fine. So get yourself signed in and playing along with us. But yeah, you get to hear our Monday night predictions made ridiculously early as it stands. So yeah, with that being said, Chris, have you thought about who you're going to put fastest in Q3 for this one?
It should It should be a good weekend for McLaren. This track rewards a car that's in a good place, a balanced car. I think I'm going to flip back to Norris this weekend after saying Piastri. Well, Piastri obviously won last time, but yeah, back to Norris for me.
Okay, well, I mean, Norris has had a podium in Japan, but it wasn't. It was before we flipped to it being early in the season.
Yeah.
It was at the end of 2023, I want to say. I can't remember. Definitely wasn't last season anyway, because it was one of the ones back end of the year. That makes it difficult for me, because I think I'm going to end up copying you and saying Norris as well. I was going to go double Norris on this one. I'm still going to do it. Are you saying double Norris?
I am as well, I think, yeah.
Okay, so double Norris from us for race win and fastest in Q3. First DNF, where are you going with this, Chris?
I think I'm going to stay away from the obvious ones. I'm going to say Gasly.
Okay. Mine's also French. I'm going to say Ocon. I'm not going to be as horrible as I suggested I might be earlier in the show, where I said Tsunoda had the perfect trifecta of reasons to first DNF, but I'm going to go with just one of the random drivers from a Haas driving a special livery. So I've gone with Ocon. So Paul in the chat is already saying, I'm definitely putting Yuki.
Taking no prisoners.
He's like the trifecta. I mean, look, even if I don't get my point for doing it in Predictions League and putting my money where my mouth is, I'm going to be happy that I said it here. The perfect trifecta existed. It's like the Bermuda Triangle of DNFs. Like if it's your first race, your home race, and you've got a special livery all at once, you are not finishing that race. Yeah. Imagine that he's out like somewhere near the front and something happens, like the engine blows up or something. That's like got drama written all over. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. Number of finishes. I'm going to say we usually do okay here. There is rain, which sometimes causes incident. Well, there's potential for rain, which sometimes causes incidents here. So I'm going to go somewhere in the middle of like an average number and say 17. How about you?
That's what I was going to say as well, but that means we just have the same. No, I'm sticking to my guts. I'm saying 17 as well.
Okay, so
that feels about right.
This is the week we both score nothing, then you know that's going to happen, don't you?
Yeah, probably.
And then random driver. Let me just go see who that is for this week. It is Fernando Alonso. After 2 DNFs in a row, Fernando Alonso.
Tricky.
I think he's bound to finish one now. And Japan feels like a circuit where Alonso can probably get the most out of the car. And we've seen the car actually finish in okay positions in Lance Stroll's hands. So overall, I'm going to say he gets a weekend together, takes advantage maybe of some of the changing conditions if we get them, and he finishes 7th. That's where I'm going to go, if that helps you make a decision.
I think I'm going to go... I'll go 8th, I think. But I agree with your logic, for sure.
Yeah, you think 7th is a little too much too soon?
Maybe. Let's not get silly.
Okay, so that is our predictions. That is ours locked in on the site, gone. If you're lucky enough to be in the Discord and listening live, predictions are open now that I've done that, so you can go start submitting yours. If you're listening to this back or watching it on YouTube, then obviously it's definitely already open. So head to backisagrid.com and get involved. Should we round out this week with a little bit of inbox to see us out?
Let's.
Keep me saying now. Stay out. Box. Hey, man.
Let's see. Luke says, what do you think Red Bull does if Yuki performs on par or, God forbid, worse He did say that I added that just to add some drama to it, but or worse than Liam has been doing for the first 2 races. Will they accept that it's something to do with the car and not the drivers in the second car that are the issue?
I think they have to at this point. As I said earlier, like there's no one left. Like there's really not another choice unless there's some inter-team swapping going on mid-season or something. But like, is any other driver going to want to be in that seat at the moment? Yeah, I do think it's going to be this lineup to the end of the season now, regardless of how it goes. But
yeah,
they do seem to be slowly accepting that the car is more of the problem.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it a lot already. I don't think I can add much more to it other than what you've already said.
Next question from Tom Murray, who says, in any other team, Horner and Marko would have been handed their sandwiches wrapped in a roadmap by now for making both the team and the young driver program look ridiculous. Why do you think they keep getting a pass, especially after the last 2 years or so? And is it time the shareholders sent them both packing?
I mean, the straight answer to that, without being too silly about it, is in terms of the shareholders of all the racing entities, they are them pretty much.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they're not shareholders within Red Bull itself, as in the holding company of all the energy drink and all its subsidiaries, but when it comes to the F1 team and Red Bull Technology and Red Bull Advanced Manufacturing or whatever it is, there's like 2 companies that essentially do one's like the development company of the car and one's the manufacturing company of the car. And I think that's how they get around the situations with them basically essentially giving parts to Racing Bulls, because it's not the Red Bull team that makes them, it's these partner companies that make it. There will 100% be some kind of weird reason for that. But if you go look at who's in charge of all these companies, it's Helmut Marko and usually Christian Horner involved in some capacity as well.
Yeah,
so,
I know Christian Horner's CEO of the racing team.
Yeah, it's like saying if Toto... Well, I mean, I suppose there's someone to Mercedes, at Mercedes to answer from to some degree in Mercedes GP. But it is like saying when Mercedes were going through that bad patch over the last... What is it, 2020? Sorry, no, that's too far back. 2022, 2023, those couple of years where they were really struggling with that design. That's like saying, why is Toto not coming under fire? Because he's basically a part owner of the team. Like, there's not really anybody else to answer to other than the other people who own the team with him. So I think that's the main reason that if it was any other team, like has been asked in the question, I think they probably would have gone. But they're literally the top of the team between the pair of them.
I mean, as you say, there is Red Bull GmbH, which is like the main overarching Red Bull company above. But like sort of in the last couple of years, primarily after Dietrich's Mateschitz died, there's been a bit of a power struggle, it seems. And the likes of Christian Horner and Helmut Marko kind of came out on top of that. Like, Helmut Marko is within the camp of Max Verstappen and Jos Verstappen. Like, that's a kind of a fixture that if one of them goes, the rest are going to go kind of thing. Like, they're there because they've cemented their positions there. And I think it would take a lot more than this for that boat to get rocked enough for them to leave.
Well, yeah, and the main shareholders, it's still split not quite 50-50, but it's basically now split between the 2 sons of the 2 founders because of them both passing away in the years that it's been a business.
Yeah, I think
it's
so.
Now, I can't remember Mataschitz's son's first name, but basically Dietrich's son took over all his shareholdings when he passed away. And then the other part owner, who I'm blanking on the name of, but it's now his son, and it's been his son for a long time alongside Dietrich.
Yeah.
So there's not really anybody other than that, I guess, to truly answer to, because the racing entity is the racing entity and has its own dealings that's basically run by Helmut and Christian. So, and I mean, I can't speak on behalf of the guys who now are the main shareholders in Red Bull GmbH, but for all we know, they're not racing people, and it's like, we just need to leave that to the racing people. I know that there's going to be an element of, I mean, well, that's what Dietrich used to do, didn't he? He got involved in terms of being at the races and just being part of it, but I don't think he was ever involved in actually running the team and making decisions. He was just there as a face of Red Bull and being part of it. He was never part of running the team.
Yeah,
which generally speaking, if you're in that position, that's the sensible thing to do, is to
completely
let the people who know what they're doing run it. But it's just a bit of a shame when they don't have any loyalty to drivers, I guess.
Yeah.
Last one for this week. Chris, not you, Chris, a different Chris, says, are Williams going to win a race this year? And if they do, under what circumstances? This Chris's guess is that Albon is going to come out of the pits right as some leaders take each other out and cause a safety car. So essentially just like a really opportune situation where he falls into a good position and holds it.
It would take something like Gasly's win at Monza or Ocon's win in Hungary, where it's a strange race under strange circumstances and they find their way to the front and hold on. It would take something like that.
Or something like Brazil with the Alpines last year.
Yeah,
I know obviously they didn't win it, did they? But like being up there, I think if they're going to do it, that's the kind of situation that has to come about probably.
And, you know, that Alpine, it was a double podium, wasn't it, last year they got?
Second and third, weren't they, I think?
Yeah,
in
kind
Brazil.
of came about as a result of nailing the strategy calls for the most part. Just taking nothing away from the drivers. And that does seem to be an area that Williams have really upped their game on in the last couple of years. So, definitely not impossible, but not something I'll be putting any money on happening, put it that way.
Yeah, definitely not.
And that about wraps us up this week, I think. Please remember, if you want to play a predictions game, that it is at least for those of us in Europe, it's another early in the morning one. So you will probably want to get your predictions in before you go to bed Friday night, unless you're planning on getting up very early on Saturday for qualifying. If you want to get in touch with us, you can find out how to do that on the same website as the predictions, backofthegrid.com, or we're on all the various social media things. If you're an audio listener and you'd like to experience this in a video format, we have that for you as well, where all of our episodes are in full on YouTube. If you'd like to join our wonderful Discord community, you can go to patreon.com/backofthegrid to find out how to do that. And I think that's all the things. So we'll be back this time next week to review what I'm hoping will be a very entertaining Japanese Grand Prix, because I always love the Japanese Grand Prix. It is one of the best circuits on the calendar.
Agreed.
But until then, thanks for joining us and goodbye.
Bye, everyone.